Hey everyone, and welcome back to Horrors Revealed. Today, we're diving into some truly mind-blowing stories. We've gathered 10 insane things that people have witnessed with their own eyes, but no one seems to believe them. Let's get into it. This happened to my mom and me, but nobody believes our story. I was at the kitchen table studying when I was 16, and my mom was cooking dinner. A fly was buzzing around, and she swatted at it with a dishcloth, the same dishcloth that was on her shoulder being used as a hand-wiping rag while cooking. While waving the cloth around, she let go of it. It flew somewhere behind her, and then it was just gone. I mean gone. We both overturned that entire kitchen and even pulled out furniture, like the fridge, looking for it until we started to feel crazy. Was there ever a rag? Was she just using her hand and not a rag to swat at the fly and we were mistaken? It was so bizarre. Years later, when the house was completely empty because we were moving out, we both went back in there and did one final look. No rag. So I guess in some alternate dimension, some gnome was sitting around and a portal opened to dump a wet cooking rag on it because what other explanation is there? When I was a kid, I had a favorite stuffed frog. I slept with it every night. My cousin liked it too, so his mom got him one. One day after he had stayed the night, I noticed I had 2 stuffed frogs and assumed my cousin left his stuffed frog at my house. When I brought it back to him, he showed me that he still had his frog. My frog had a crack down the center of his left eye. Upon inspection of the mysterious third frog, it had the exact same crack down its left eye. When I compared my frog and my cousin's, they had minor differences. Tag in a slightly different spot, some seemed to be sewn a bit off, and the casting lines on the eyes were different. My frog and the mystery third frog were exactly the same, though. I could only assume it was somehow duplicated. The stuffed frog was not the only time this happened either. I ended up with 2 right shoes and 1 left shoe from the same pair of shoes. We had an old promotional glass from the Batman movie. I found it behind the couch one day and went to put it back where it goes, but it was already there. My mom lost a pair of earrings. They had been missing for almost 10 years when 2 of us found the pair of earrings on the same day. Now she has 2 sets. What weirds me out the most is that nobody in my family seems to notice or care, even when I bring it up. The most I can get out of them is, yeah, that's kind of weird, I guess. I lived high up in a skyscraper at the time, the 26th floor. Potentially relevant is that I just watched a convincing UFO documentary. As the credits rolled, I noticed a large weird insect on the window, so I went over to look at it. It was a cool bug, but just a bug. But beyond it, I then noticed something small falling from the sky, apparently in a straight line. It tumbled down to eye level and then landed on a nearby patch of grass. I put a leash on the dog, took the elevator down, and walked over to investigate. It was an empty bottle of Febreze air freshener. To this day, I don't know if it fell out of a helicopter or what. It was much higher than any of the neighboring buildings when I noticed it. Maybe an Olympic athlete could have thrown it that far up. Maybe someone launched it with a homemade cannon or something. Or maybe it was a message from the aliens that I misunderstood. My ex and I were driving around one night super late, around 2 a.m. We were driving around the empty edge of town, where there was a refinery. We were driving along a ridge road that overlooked a bunch of refinery stuff when suddenly the streetlights went out and the road was like dark. I pulled the car to a stop because we were going quick, and suddenly I couldn't see anything. My ex gasped and said, "Look!" The sky flashed bright for a moment, then everything was dark. The refinery, the sky, cloud cover, everything. Then the whole sky turned green from behind the next hill, where, as a fact, there was nothing over there, a couple abandoned storage tanks, and a basically unreachable beach at the bottom of a forest. It was bright, like a near-day light, but green. Then it went dark again. Slowly, emergency lights came on below. I didn't wait around to see what was going on. we hightailed it back to town. There were fire trucks and police vehicles roving around the edge of the refinery, full of lights but silent. Back in town, the power was also out and the streets were empty. Dead empty. Then 3 ambulances, again full of lights but silent, were tearing down the other way towards the refinery. Then I noticed a cop about a half block behind me, full lights, no siren, and it followed along the main roads, then stopped at the corner of my residential. I have never seen anything like that before or ever again. No one believes me. About a week after my granddad died, I was sleeping in his house where my grandma still lived and got woken up to the sound of my granddad's voice calling my name. I walked out onto the landing at the top of the stairs, and it was absolutely freezing cold. Then, when I looked down the stairs, the wall at the bottom was all warped and moving weirdly like jelly. The way I always described it was like that old Windows PC screensaver where a magnified blob would move across the screen and distort everything, or like the Predator invisible outline effect. The next morning, before I even mentioned anything, my grandma said she had also heard my granddad's voice during the night. Years later, my grandma also died in that house, and my cousin ended up moving into it. She eventually had to move out because she kept hearing the sound of my grandma's smoker's cough and her walking stick clicking up and down the stairs during the night, and it really freaked her out. This was over 20 years ago, and I still think about it often and have a weird urge to go inside the house. In the 1980s, after the Satanic Panic happened, I developed an extreme show-me attitude toward the paranormal and spent a lot of time visiting hauntings, hanging around with occultists, and checking out weird little cults. For a while, I dated a guy who was involved with a relatively well-known paranormal group at the time, and people were always showing up claiming they had proof of ghosts, chupacabras, or psychic powers, but none of it ever panned out. Except for one thing. I developed the belief that some people have weird electromagnetic energy, and electronic devices tend to fritz out around them, especially when they're upset. Some of them seem to channel it and become good at getting electronic devices to work. Others are always having the cash register malfunction when they're in a hurry, or their phone stops recognizing them at the worst possible time, or the ATM suddenly starts displaying garbage when they're trying to get money. The best or worst example was this guy that I found especially irritating for reasons I couldn't explain, but my boyfriend thought he was interesting and offered to give him a ride home, and every single traffic light we went through started blinking red in all 4 directions when we passed through the intersection. When I was 16, 1997, I went with my aunt and cousin to the Amazon in Brazil. We flew to Manaus and then took a 3-hour boat ride to a resort built on stilts on the Rio Negro. We were in the middle of nowhere, with lots of wildlife, including monkeys. Some of the smaller monkeys liked to take things off of the tourists and run away. For instance, my aunt was robbed by a monkey of her mosquito repellent. The monkey taunted her before he chucked it into the water. During the day, I decided to grab a beer and drink in one of the lounges with my cousin and some other dudes. We were about 3 floors up, but there were walkways that connected the buildings. I could see a kid, about 10 years old, on one of the walkways playing with a monkey. The kid wasn't close enough for me to advise against it. He was chewing some gum and decided to give the monkey his gum. The monkey took a couple of chews and then put the gum straight into the kid's hair. The kid seemed confused and shocked. Then the monkey lunged at the kid and wrapped his entire body around his face. The kid starts running around, blinded, and his screams are muffled by the monkey body. Then this Mormon missionary lady comes to save the kid in a pretty sundress and big hat. Oh good, an adult. The monkey turns to her and then starts attacking her, tearing at her hat and clothes. Then the monkey got bored and left. Everyone was in tatters. All the while I'm sitting there watching all this transpire in seconds. It was surreal. Don't mess with monkeys. When I was in high school, I went from Ohio down to Alabama for a week for a funeral and stayed at a relative's house that was off some country road. At night, I would sit out on the front porch and play the DS when I saw a baby bear come into the yard. I was stunned for a bit, and I watched it until it sat down and stared at me. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to approach those, so I took my phone out of my pocket and turned the flash on, then walked up to it slowly so I could get a close-up picture and maybe pet it if it let me. Within a minute of me leaving that porch and standing right next to it, the mother or father came up on the side of me and kept breathing heavily while looking at me. I just froze since I thought there was no way I'd get away from that thing. Maybe 3 feet away from me at the end of the yard and inside the door, so I started crying and praying it wouldn't rip me to shreds. The baby walked in between me and the parent, and then rubbed up against them, and they both left across the street. Uninhabited wooded field area. My grandmother said she didn't believe me because I wasn't dead. All right, I have been waiting my whole life for this. A couple of months ago, I went to the Poconos with my family. I have seen videos on Reddit about a bear around the parts where we were staying, so I was joking around with my cousins the whole time. For any random sound that we heard, I would claim it's just the bear fucking around. Eventually, they got fed up with it. One morning, I woke up because I had to pee. It was around 6 a.m. For this one goddamn time, I forgot to take my phone with me because it was too early to use a phone. I was bunking with my cousins in the basement. At that time, the bathroom was occupied, so I figured I'd wait and maybe catch the sunrise. Just as I approached the patio door, the mama bear was right outside. The only thing separating me and this magnificent creature was a glass door. I could hear my heart beat out of my chest. Due to the angle of sunlight falling on the glass door, the bear couldn't see me, but I could. It was the most surreal thing I ever witnessed. Obviously, nobody in the family bought it. This happened when I was a sophomore in high school. The school day just ended, and I was on my way toward the exit nearest where my bus was parked, waiting for its riders. This exit was somewhat isolated because you couldn't enter the building through it, and it was on the side of the school, where only the band and orchestra rooms were. Anyways, I turned down the hallway toward the exit, and I see a couple of students, I presume they were high school seniors, sitting around at the exit with a garbage can in between them. As I come closer, I notice them both eating bananas. As I get even closer, I see there are banana peels piled in the garbage can, above the rim. When I got close enough, they offered me a banana. I was so flabbergasted, all I could do was decline and leave on my way to the bus. I have no idea how they could have eaten so many bananas, or if they just opened up a bunch of peels and threw the bananas away with the peels, or even who these people were. But every day I regret not having asked them questions to come to an understanding of what was going on.